dedicated to each and every one of you who appreciate a great glass of wine. You know what I mean?
It's Monday. Let's raise a glass to the beginning of another week. It's time to unscrew, uncork, or saber a bottle, and let's begin exploring the wine glass. Today, we virtually travel to Napa, California with Chuck McKahn of McKahn Family Cellars. The winery was established in 2014 and exclusively produces Rhône varietals. Join us as we discuss Chuck's love of wine at an early age, what is so special about Rhone Varieties, and how McKahn Family Cellars is truly a family-run business. If you enjoy exploring the wine glass, I'd appreciate you giving me some love by taking 2 minutes out of your day to swipe, to rate and review on whatever app you are listening on. It is the best way to support the show. Also, if you'd like to keep up on everything Exploring the Wine Glass, head over to exploringthewineglass.com and sign up for the newsletter. Slancha!
I want a nice glass right now.
Hey everybody, I'm Lori Budd, a UC Davis winemaking program, someday service, champagne specialist, and WSET Level 2 graduate. You can find Exploring the Wine Glass on all the socials as well as your favorite podcast catchers. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to swipe, subscribe, rate, and review. I promise I'll never tell you what to drink, but I'll always share what's in my glass.
Red wine. Give me the blush.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Allure of the Poor, sponsored by Dresita Wines. I am your host, Lori of Exploring the Wine Glass, and we are here today with Chuck McKahn of McKahn Family Wineries. So welcome, Chuck. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And so the wine of the day is one of my favorite varietals, is Viognier. So when we start getting into the wine, which won't be too long because I'm a little thirsty, we're going to be talking about this 2021 Viognier from Sonoma County. So thank you for sending that over. I am excited to try it. It's all over here ready for my first sip.
My pleasure.
But before we get into it, I want to get a little bit into the McKahn. And am I saying it correctly? McKahn?
You are. Yeah,
Okay.
you are.
Okay.
Yeah, we actually had a name spelling change like 100 years ago, I think. There was an A between the H and the N. And
so McKahn. So
yeah, I
Scottish?
guess. No, it's definitely Irish.
Okay.
I honestly don't know the genesis of I don't know what it was pronounced like back then and why they changed the spelling or any of that stuff. So no one thought to ask while those people were alive. So it's a mystery for us surviving McKahns for sure.
Was it when they came over? Because I know a lot of people, they were already here.
No, it was after.
Okay.
It was after, yeah.
Because a lot of names got changed.
Quite a bit after, yeah.
Okay. A lot of names got changed when people came over, right? They're like, we're not writing that out. We're just going to do this.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. It was on purpose. It was not a Ellis Island clerical error.
That's you. I would be diving deep into just try to figure that out, with all the spare time I'm sure you have, right?
Right.
So McKahn Family Winery, actually, from what I understand, really is the birth child of your mom having a little bit of empty nest syndrome, right? You went away. She wanted to start this winery.
Well, yeah, it was. I mean, not really. Both my parents had listened to me kind of dream about opening a wine brand or starting a wine brand for, I don't know, since definitely 18 years old. So by the time we started it in 2014, I was 25. So like 7 years. And they had seen enough of my own personal growth in the wine industry at that point. And kind of the story is that they came into a little bit of money. My dad sold his ski boat. He wasn't using it, sold it, and we took that cash and started the wine brand with it. But yeah, I mean, it is, I don't know about an empty nest syndrome, but definitely we spend more time together now that we have a business than we ever did after I moved out. So I guess so.
And I read you knew from like 15, or you just said like 18, that you wanted to be a winemaker. So your mom was in the wine industry prior to,
Yeah.
okay, so you just fell in love with the industry?
Yeah. So when I was a very young child, my mom worked in the export department at Wente Vineyards. So I would have been this would have been like 92 to 2000. So I would have been, 3 to 11 kind of thing. And she left the wine industry to spend a little more time closer to home. She was traveling a lot, so she got a different job where she didn't have to travel. And I mean, I was a little kid. I had no concept of what a career was, what people did for a living, why people did anything for a living at that time. But then when it got to be about high school time, I really those memories started to kind of come back a little bit. And I'd spent a little bit of time with her at Wente in her office and taking walks with their cellar master, Mark Claren, through their gigantic winery. And those memories kind of flooded back and influenced me, I guess, a little bit. But yeah, since 15 or 16, I've pretty much known that I've wanted to be a winemaker.
And so where were you growing up?
In just north of Modesto, so a little tiny almond farming community called Ripon.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah,
Drive past it.
Central Valley.
Okay. We drive past it. So,
Yeah,
so were you the only person who wanted to be a winemaker of your friends?
only person who was talking about it. I went to high school with the two McManus children, Tanya and Justin. Their parents own McManus Family Vineyards. You'll see they make a bunch of wine. You'll see their wine all over the place. So apart from them, I don't remember anybody else talking about it. In my, not necessarily my graduating class, but in like plus or minus a couple of years, there have been other winemakers that have come out of Ripon High School, but not many. Not many. It was definitely not a career that anyone really talked about.
And so when you were that age, when you just decided you were going to be a winemaker, you're walking through the winery and stuff. So you actually did get a the behind the scenes look, because I think a lot of people who are like, oh, winemaking, it's so romantic, it's so awesome. You get to drink wine all the time. And that's really not the story behind it. But you got to see some behind the scenes. Were you at that age, did you notice those behind the scenes stuff? Or the incessant cleaning,
No, I was so young. I mean, I was, like I said, not even really a teenager when my mom was working there. They I did notice that these were hardworking people. So kind of right from the beginning, I knew that wine making was not like a romanticized career. These are people who are sweating for a living. It's a manual labor job, especially for the first 10 to 15 years of doing it. And but no, I did not. I didn't know what I was looking at really. I just saw people working hard and having a good time doing it.
well, that's always good. That's always good.
Yeah,
And then, so now you went to college, you went to Cal Poly?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So you went to Cal Poly for enology.
yeah.
And so how is that, like that program for you? Did it open your eyes? Did you think, yeah, this is pretty much what, or did you go, whoa, I'm not so sure I want to do this anymore? Or yeah, I'm right on.
No, college was fun. I chose Cal Poly not just because of the wine program, but because of the location. And I had a really good time in college. I learned a lot. We made wine for the school in an old ag annex building. It was like a big blue garage, like a kind of like an oversized garage, and they installed a walk-in cooler to store. I think we had probably 12 barrels in there, and I have not seen it yet, but I hear that Cal Poly's winery is now open. It's a professional,
Oh,
fancy-looking
wow.
winery, so I'm ready to get down there to go check it out. But no, Cal Poly was awesome. Had a really good time. The program officially was pretty new. The Poly's put out winemakers for years and years and years, but they always had fermentation science degrees or fruit science degrees or some kind of a related chemistry. And then when I got there in 2007, they had, to my understanding was they had just made it an official major.
Okay.
So within a couple of years of me arriving there. So in that respect, it was pretty new. They hired Dr. Jerry Ritchie to come. She came from Napa Valley College actually to come head the department and, kind of strengthen the reputation of the program, I would say would be kind of what her main role there was. But they had Dr. Keith Patterson there for a really long time, and he has since passed away. But they've always had a strong foundation of winemaking education and viticultural education. But when I got there 15 years ago, they really formalized it. But I would say that my own personal growth has always come more from working than from school. I don't know if that's just the way my brain is wired, but even though Cal Poly is their slogan is learn by doing, there's just nothing like not having a summer vacation. Like there's nothing like working your butt off for a couple years at a time and really getting into the seasonal rhythm of making wine and growing grapes. But I have a special place in my heart for Cal Poly, but my work experience has always been a little bit more, I don't know, impactful, I think would be the word that I'm looking for.
And actually, that was going to be my next question is you're in school and it's for the most part, I mean, you were making wine and everything, but it's kind of guided making wine, right? So it's more
Right.
book smart or book knowledge than hands-on knowledge. It's very limited in the spectrum of that hands-on knowledge. Then you graduate and you're like, "Ooh, welcome to the world. I need to go get a job." So what was your first job out of school?
Yeah, so I actually, before I went to Cal Poly, I worked for McManus for a whole summer and most of a harvest. And then in college, I worked for Tolosa for multiple harvests.
Oh,
So
okay.
that really helped me. I mean, I did better in school because of those jobs. Like I got to actually see what the instructors were talking about. And we did make wine on campus, which was really important. But after college, I wanted to move to Europe. And I really, really, really wanted to get a job in Spain.
Love
And
Spain.
I learned, yeah, I have since visited and almost didn't come home, but it's awesome. But this was 2011, so the global economy wasn't that good, and European countries in general, I think, protect their workers a little bit more than we're used to. So just going to Europe, getting a residency, getting the right visas and stuff, and then just getting a job and expecting to get paid to do what plenty of people over there will do for just room and board is just not realistic. And I've had friends later on go and get internships in Europe, but at the time I needed to get paid. I had student loans that were going to be due in 6 months. I can't work for free. So it was like maybe June of 2011. I was getting a little desperate. Europe wasn't working out. So I just got on winejobs.com like we all do and just sent out my resume to probably a dozen wineries, some of which I had heard of, some of which I hadn't, and just looking for a cellar internship. That was really all I was looking for. And most of them were up here in the North Bay. So I would say like 9 of the 12 were in Napa, and then like 3 were in Sonoma. And I got a couple of job offers at multiple wineries, but one of them was Chapelet Winery on Pritchard Hill in Napa. And I did not come from a wine consuming family that, I mean, they drank wine, but they were not drinking Chapelet wine.
Right.
And so I actually had not heard of them. I felt kind of embarrassed to have not heard of them, but I can forgive myself for that now. So I worked the 2011 harvest of Chapelet. I got the job. They told me in my face I got the job because of what I looked like I could do in the cellar. I could drag a hose, push a pump, wouldn't need any hand holding, wouldn't need any help moving heavy equipment. And I was like, you know what? I don't care. Like I'll do whatever you guys want me to
Right.
do. So um I got, like everyone else, I got laid off at the end of harvest. It was a wild harvest, by the way. I was so excited to be there. Um, so excited to meet new people. Moved out of San Luis Obispo, new town, new wines. This is Napa Valley. This is the show. Like, I had my notebook. I was going to take copious notes, work hard, not take any days off. And it was the most depressing harvest that Napa's had since 1972. And the full-time staff there were just sad, just the whole time. It was cold all summer long. It rained like I want to say like 5 inches maybe in September. We had,
Oof.
vineyards that weren't even done coloring up, weren't even done through veraison in September. We're just getting rain dumped on top of them. You're way past the point of being able to spray. And it was just so much fun to see a professional organization just having to be humble and
Well,
say like, okay, we're going to learn how to make wine in a wet year, which they
right.
hadn't had in, at that point, I think 1998. So like 13 years.
Yes.
And it wasn't nearly as bad as 2011 or 1972. So like, it was awesome to be there to see that. And I lost my train of thought. I got laid off at the end of harvest, and like most interns do. And their enologist got a promotion up to Cade as assistant winemaker, and his spot opened up, and they offered it to me. So I took it, and that was, at that point in time, that was my dream job. It was about 50% lab, 50% cellar, all the tasting that I could handle, blending trials, all that stuff. So that was my first year out of college, was moving to Napa and getting through that harvest, and then just waiting on somebody to open up a spot for me.
Oh, so I mean, obviously you could do a lot more than just carry hoses and move things without that if offered you the job of enologist right out off the bat.
Yeah,
You
yeah, for
proved
sure.
yourself.
I had a lab harvest under my belt. I had done plenty of wine chemistry in college. And more importantly, though, they liked my personality. I got along really well with
Mhm.
all the full-time staff there. So I had got along really well with my fellow interns there as well. So it was a good fit. I got really lucky that Steven moved on and went up to Cade, because I would have been sitting around for a while. It was one of those times where like the economy was a little scary for people looking for a job.
Right.
There weren't like help wanted signs everywhere, like there are now.
No, right, right. Now it's the opposite. Nobody wants to
Yeah.
work. But what an educational experience too, because if you think about it, if you go into as an intern and everything is perfect, it's the best season ever. I don't know if you would learn as much in that internship because things just go smoothly. So there's no real opportunity to talk about how you can do this or why you do this or whatever. So, the bad of it all really is probably the best educational experience you could have had.
It definitely is. Yeah, absolutely. All the bad, you remember the bad advantages more than you remember the good ones, for
Right.
sure. A similar scenario has played out with smoke taint, and like in 2020,
Mhm.
nobody was prepared for it. It was more devastating than 2011 for sure, because there were a lot of vineyards that just did not get picked.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, you adapt. It's not something. The good vintages kind of make themselves. You're just kind of walking a dog at that point. A
Right.
well trained dog.
Right, right, absolutely. So that was 2011. Now McKahn actually started in 2014.
Yeah, yeah. I was
Hmm.
still enologist at Chapelet in 2014, and we crushed a Chardonnay, Syrah, and Zinfandel in
Okay.
2014.
And do you have a state fruit at McKahn or are you sourcing or a
Yeah, we
combination?
don't own any vineyard. Yeah,
Okay.
we purchase all of our grapes.
Okay. And so how did your family, I mean, I guess mom working for Wente kind of gave her some connections, and you being in the industry had some connections, but how did you sort out your vineyards of where you want to source from?
So I got my parents told me like, hey, this is what we want to do with this money from the boat sale, like I was saying earlier. And I was mortified, by the way, because that's a lot more responsibility
Oh.
than I personally would give a 25-year-old now. But they believed in me, so I definitely took the reins
Okay.
with the sourcing, where we're going to make the wines, the style of the wines. Excuse me. That was they. I mean, they were living in Ripon still at the time, so that was my job, was to find the fruit, find the facility, handle all the winemaking, all the packaging,
Mm.
all of the blending and bottling and all that stuff. So since then, there's four of us now, McKahns, that are involved, my two parents and my wife, Brittany. And we've all definitely staked, not really staked our claims, but kind of like we all bring strengths to our business. So uh, my mom now is like the administrative guru. She does all of our compliance. She has
Oof.
since the beginning all of our compliance, which is a thankless
Insane.
job.
Yes.
It's just a thankless job. It's something that I would gladly pay a lot of money to not have to do. She does a lot of sales. She does a lot of direct sales mostly.
Okay.
Um, my wife is more of the marketing, like sales and marketing type person. She's a director of sales and marketing at Hudson Vineyards and Carneros. She brings a wealth of knowledge on making your brand look pretty and professional and prim and proper. She's been all over now, from Meadowood in St. Helena, the hotel. She went from there to Titus Vineyards to Kapchandi, which is a cult winery in Yountville, and she really has like this whole perception knowledge, I call it, where it's like how you want your brand to be perceived,
Okay.
and you have to do that. That's her thing. And then my dad just loves being around the business. He really does. When we had a tasting room, which we closed down 2 years ago, he built it. I mean,
Wow.
that was his contribution, was just the three of us kind of telling him what we wanted it to look like, and then him actually doing it. And he's retired now from his full-time job, so he's going to be hauling grapes for me this year and all that stuff. But our jobs are all definitely, they play to our strengths,
Right.
I would say.
Division of labor to everybody's strength.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And so you said you had a tasting room, but you closed it down. Where was the tasting room? If you don't own vineyards, where was the actual tasting room?
Yeah, that's a good question. We had a tasting room in Livermore.
Okay.
My parents were living and working in Livermore up until 2 years ago. 2.5 years ago. And it just wasn't working. My wife and I were living here in Napa, working here in Napa. Um, a 40-hour work week is always a treat up around these parts. So like to do that, and then to have to go run a tasting room in Livermore, and people didn't get that we only had one or two Livermore wines, but we have a tasting room in Livermore. It was such a convoluted, back to that thing about perception knowledge. We were not projecting what we wanted our brand to be perceived as. So not only that, it wasn't working. It wasn't profitable. So we took advantage of COVID, and it was closed down anyway. And even though we were surviving, we weren't going out of business or anything. We were surviving, but we were just like, let's take this as an opportunity to let's let a Livermore brand take this space, and we'll move our brand to Napa. And we did. And we are at a collective now
Okay.
in close to downtown Napa. We're one of 14 vintners at a place called Feast It Forward.
As soon as you said, I was like, I bet you're at Feast It Forward.
Yep,
That seems to
yep.
be a very in spot, a very cool
It's a
spot to
cool, it's a
be.
cool spot. Yeah, it's a cool spot. Katie Schaefer, the owner there, is something else. You can't, you wouldn't believe the energy that she has in her daily life and in her business. It's unbelievable. It's a cool, eclectic, something for everyone tasting room. It's big now. She's got two different buildings and like a whole entertainment area between those two buildings. So we've been there for 2 years, and my parents moved up here to Napa full time 2 years ago. So we're a Napa based brand now. So we've no plans to open up a tasting room on our own. Kind of been there, done that for the time being. But if the right opportunity ever came, I would definitely entertain it.
And now back to those vineyards. What about, well, let's talk about how the reason why I contacted you in the first place was because you're Rhone centric.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
there's lots of wineries who are Bordeaux centric. And there's fewer that are Rhone, but I find that a lot of the Rhone people then, oh, I'll just throw in a Cab Franc, or I'll just throw, like, they're like, no,
Yeah.
I'm going to cross this over. So what about Rhone varieties is what called to you that this is what you want McKahn to focus on?
Yeah, it really came down to the red wines that I enjoy. So I'm going to talk mostly about red wines. I know we're going to talk about the Viognier in a little bit, but the red wines that I enjoy drinking the most are Grenache, Syrah, Mourvèdre, blends of those three. Um, Petit Syrah, which is an adopted Rhone varietal in the New World. It's not really a Rhone varietal, but Carignan, Counoise. In Europe, some of my favorite Rhone reds that I've had are from Châteauneuf-du-Pape or Gigondas or Vaqueiras. Please don't quiz me on brand names, because when they're French, they're in one ear and out the
The
other.
region, that's all that
Yeah,
matters. Yeah.
it came down to that, and then also our first two vintages, we weren't only Rhones. We were Rhone. We always had a Syrah, which is my favorite red variety. We always had a Syrah, and then we had Chardonnay and a Zinfandel. Excuse me. The Chardonnays, like when you get out in the market and you're trying to sell Chardonnay, it could be the most beautiful Chardonnay in the world, but you're fighting a battle against absolute giants.
Right.
I mean, it's David and Goliath isn't even close to the proper like analogy. It's just not
Right.
even close. You're fighting, you're trying to sell Chardonnay at, maybe $20 wholesale when it's a $30 retail wine. You're trying to make your margins work. And, a buyer is looking at you and saying, well, I'm getting Rombauer for not much more than that, and like, who are you compared to them? And it's just, it is what it is. La Crema is going to kick your butt every time. I mean, there's a million of them. I'm not going to give them any more press than they need, but we did that for 2 years, and I just kind of realized, like, I'm not having a lot of fun making Chardonnay. I make Chardonnay all day at my day job, and then I'm going out to the market on the weekends, and I'm not selling it. So what's the point? And I thought about it. My wife was talking to me like, what kind of wines do you want to make? Like, you're going to have an easier time selling wines that you are excited about. So I was like, man, I would love to do Rhones. And in 2016, after two full vintages of doing other things in 2016, we just went for it and haven't looked back. Haven't haven't made a non-Rhone other than Petit Syrah since.
All right. And so on your website, you have that that Syrah, how I guess the United States feels about Syrah is shameful, like the respect it gets. So
Oh, it's terrible. It's worse than Merlot. Like, Merlot went through from Sideways, came out in 2004, and it's just now coming back. So it's been a 15-year battle, a little longer for Merlot. And Merlot never really went away like Syrah. I mean, Syrah has been just battered in the, like, nationally. as a serious wine in non-wine producing states, Syrah it's just not even thought of. Cabernet is king, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir is getting there. Bordeaux, Meritage blends, Bordeaux blends, but it's really taken the Central Coast maturing as a wine growing region, getting some serious money producing those wines, getting serious money selling those wines nationally. That's gotten Rhones going, and even still, Syrah is just, the reputation is just not, I think, where it should be. Whether or not in my lifetime it ever comes back, I don't know. We make a small amount of that wine because it's a hand sell. We do wholesale a little bit of it, but it's mostly us showing customers the wine and them buying it from us. It's not a wine that on a wine shelf, unless you have a wine steward who loves it, is going to sell that wine. It's just not one of those. It's not going to sell itself.
And
it's just not.
Why do you think that? Do you think that it's a confusion of the wine drinker, like between Syrah, Shiraz, Petite Syrah? Petite Syrah is its own entity, but I absolutely adore Syrah. I think it's a phenomenal varietal. I love what it puts in the glass, how versatile it is, and the body of it, and there's so much offering to it. But I to be 100% honest, I didn't realize there was a bad thought about Syrah. Like I've always
have you tried to sell it?
No, we don't make Syrah, but I understand the feeling, because we make a Chenin Blanc, and it's kind of this
Chenin Blanc. There used to be thousands of acres of Chenin Blanc in Napa Valley. It's to my knowledge, Chapelet is the only Chenin vineyard that I can think of. But there are many varieties that just go through these ups and downs of popularity, and it's usually predicated on, there's like a tipping point that happens where more of that variety is grown in a spot where it shouldn't be grown.
Right.
So then the market's perception of that variety is just a negative one.
Right. Which is what really happened to Merlot. I mean, sadly, yes, Sideways did, hit Merlot hard, but for a very wrong reason. But the fact that there was so much Merlot being grown atrociously at that point, that it was easy to hear what you wanted to hear in that movie and go, I'm never drinking Merlot,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I honestly think there's just been more bad Syrah being made. And I don't think that that's the case anymore. I think enough of it has been ripped out because it's not popular anymore. And then now we're kind of left with mostly
the good stuff.
Quality vineyards and in quality sites grown by quality growers, and it's up to us, the bakers and the producers, to change the public perception. And I'll tell you, I go to Paso every year in February for the Rhone Rangers experience, and Syrah is the most expensive wine on those lists. I know Paso is trying really hard to bring Cabernet to the kind of into their region and do that thing, but I see high quality Rhone producers making really high quality Syrahs or Syrah based blends.
Right.
And they're successful. So, I think there is hope.
And now a word from our sponsor. Exploring the Wine Glass is brought to you by Dracaena Wines. Dracaena Wines is an artisan winery located in Paso Robles, California. They have been producing wine since 2013. Their first vintage began with one wine, their classic Cabernet Franc, which received a 91 in Wine Enthusiast. Since then, they have increased production as well as expanded their portfolio, have received many accolades including multiple double gold medals and consistent 90-plus ratings. Visit their website, www.dracaenawines.com, or use the link in the show notes to schedule a private tasting and to see their entire portfolio. Purchase your award-winning wine and let Dracaena Wines help turn your moments into great memories. So as a winemaker, how does Syrah grow in the vineyard? Is it an easy vine? You're talking about, one of the comments you have is that terroir is more than soil and weather. Okay. So how does that play into effect of how you get your fruit in terms of, and process it and things like that?
Yeah, so Syrah, most of the Rhone varieties are hyper vigorous varieties. So they have evolved in places that are hot, rocky, dry. A lot of the Rhone varieties actually come from Spain. Syrah is not one of them. Syrah is from the northern Rhone, but it evolved in a tough spot. So it needs, if you plant it on soil that has nutrients and water holding capacity and things like that, it's going to grow as much as it wants. So planting it in the right site is really, really important. I've seen a lot of nice Syrah vineyards in Napa on some of the more rocky ground. If you plant it on kind of forgiving ground with a vigorous rootstock, that can become a problem. I've seen Syrah just completely coming down over the wire and just doing kind of like an old California sprawl, but not on the fruit wire. It's coming down over the top of the wire. It's
right.
same with Grenache. Grenache can be just a bear, just with how much it'll grow. So yeah, I mean, if you're going to plant Syrah, part of the terroir is you doing your job. And we have been so lucky to work with only top-notch Syrah growers in Napa that I've never really run into that problem. I've been lucky with all the growers that I've worked with, and there's nothing like working with a good grower, and there's nothing like working with a bad one. And you can really tell the difference. And the 3 Syrah vineyards that we've worked with in Napa have all been really, really, really nice. So they all know what they're doing. They all handle their canopies well. They don't make bad decisions with the planting. No one's ever put, a thirsty rootstock on really heavy or really, light soil.
Right.
And
now you have vineyards that you source from in Napa, Russian River Valley, Livermore, and Shenandoah. So
yeah.
Are you harvesting fruit from multiple regions? So are you getting Syrah from Napa, Syrah from Livermore, Syrah from Shenandoah, and you're making your blends of Syrah that way? Or are you growing, contracting for, Syrah in Napa and Grenache in Russian River and, Viognier and Shenandoah?
Yeah, the latter for sure. It's
okay.
We're doing specific wines, varietal wines from different AVAs. So the Syrah comes from Napa, the Viognier comes from Russian River, a vineyard called Katie's Corner, owned by the Kunde family. Really, really awesome vineyard. And then I get my Grenache rosé grapes from Sierra Foothills. Our current release red Grenache is from the same vineyard, but in 20 and in 21 we did not get those grapes for red Grenache. So I've moved on to a vineyard I'm going to be working with just this year for the first time called Zabala in Arroyo Seco for red Grenache. So yeah, it's I'm not making like a California blend out of anything. It's mainly pulling specific varieties from specific AVAs.
Okay. And so I think this is a good segue for the Viognier. So this is, Katie's Corner. Okay. The vineyard in the Russian River Valley. So 2021. Okay. So tell us about what you like or don't like, because nothing is ever perfect. So what you like and you don't like about Viognier.
Oh yeah, Viognier, much like Syrah, just planted in spots that it shouldn't be planted in. It's a northern Rhone white. It's not a southern Rhone white, and it somehow ends up in these really hot areas of California. And I would never name names, but it's just one of those things where warm climate Viognier, I'm sure there are some nice ones out there, but it doesn't do it for me. So when I found one, I actually stumbled into this vineyard originally working with it for Chardonnay. I got the 2015 Chardonnay for McKahn Family from this vineyard. And when we decided to switch to Rhones, I found out they had Viognier, and it was an easy switch. But it's in a warmer spot in Russian River, so it's cool climate, but the fog burns off earlier in the day than it does in like the more West County parts of Russian River. This is kind of northeast part of the AVA,
Okay.
near the town of Windsor. It's like I said, owned by the Kundys, farmed by the Duttons, and the Duttons are kind of Russian River royalty up here. They have their own brand, Dutton Goldfield, but they are a much larger grape growing operation than their wine brand is. And the vineyard's just awesome. It's on quadrilateral cordon. Everything is perfect. Like I was saying about the vigor of Rhône varieties, one way to kind of tame that is by adding more cordon. So instead of having 2, they have 4. And the canopy is always balanced. The fruit is always just perfect. Everything sets up well. If there's any clumping, they'll declump it. There's never any excess fruit on the vine. It's on a really nice aspect, kind of on a mid slope. And yeah, it just I pick it at Chardonnay bricks.
Okay.
So I pick it at 23.5 to 24.5 bricks. Potential alcohols are usually, mid to high 14s, and then I adjust it down to mid to low 14s.
Okay.
And yeah,
so I'm sorry, I'm just going to interrupt you. So for my listeners, can you explain what you mean by I adjust it? Because you're the first person who has said that. So
yeah, so this is totally above board and legal. We can adjust the alcohol in California by adjust the potential alcohol
right
before fermentation or during fermentation by adding water. So
but that's important.
If
it has to be at that time. You can't do it afterwards.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I've never heard of anybody adding water after fermentation, but I'm sure it's been done. And yeah, so if I pick it a little bit riper than the desired potential alcohol, which is usually the case because sometimes the grapes just aren't quite there yet.
Okay.
Even though the sugar is there, because there's photosynthesis happening independent of the flavor development in the grapes. So regardless of what the sugar is telling you, you might not have the flavors that you want that are going to end up in the resulting wine. So yeah, and it's never very much, the percent, I can't tell you exactly what the percentage is, but it's low to knock it down. I don't want to have a resulting wine be too high in alcohol because it really, really kind of throws the wine off balance. But I might want some of those more riper stone fruit flavors.
Well, you've accomplished that. This is beautiful. It has, to me, Viognier has a floral aspect to it that it makes it a delicate on the nose, and then the stone fruits come out. And then I find that there's 2 types of Viognier: glycerol-y, like Riesling type Viognier, and then a little bit more of a medium bodied wine that doesn't coat your tongue with that glycerol. And neither is, better or worse or whatever. My palate is this. This has a slight amount of glycerol to it because it does allow it's kind of a medium bodied wine. It's definitely not full bodied, medium bodied wine, but it coats my palate, coats my tongue, but not with that glycerol weighing that I get in some Viogniers.
Yeah, it's I think that glycerol character is the site. I think that's the warmer climate Viogniers, it's a really, really tight, dry, thick skinned cluster. Our juice yields are 135 gallons per ton if we're lucky.
Okay.
And like Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, 165, 170 gallons per ton. My Grenache Rosé is even more. So you can kind of get an idea of just how dry that cluster is.
Right.
And when you're squeezing that thick skin, that's just there's no juice in there. You're just squeezing it. You're getting a lot of those seed and skin oils out of the
Right.
out of the grape. So I think that's probably the main difference between a cool climate and a warm climate Viognier.
And then when with the thick skins, at like what bar are you pressing this at? Are you doing it at multiple?
Yeah, there's stages. I go all the way up to 2 bars, but
Okay.
there's stages. So that it squeezes it at 0.2. I think it's 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, all the way up to 2. I think it's all in even numbers. And in between each one, it'll deflate and rotate to break up
Right.
the must.
And do you keep those pressings separate, or do they all?
No,
Okay, so they all come together.
no, yeah. I include on whites all of my press juice into the main law. I don't keep it separate. The press juice is always pretty good. I've always thought. I think in lower quality vintages, it might make sense, like in a smokier, especially, it might
Yeah.
make sense to keep your hard press separate. But no, I've always kept them together.
Okay, so now you've pressed them and you go into fermentation. Are you inoculating?
Yeah, so it goes to tank first to settle, and then we 2 days
Yeah,
later
sorry.
we'll rack and then
Yep.
barrel down. And I am inoculating. I use a
Okay.
yeast that I've been a big fan of for a while now, called QA23. It's a Scott Labs product. Well, Scott Labs sells it. I'm sure another yeast manufacturer makes it, but it's a white wine yeast. It preserves kind of those estery characters, terpenes that a lot of aromatic whites have that people like. And it never produces hydrogen sulfide, which is that rotten egg character that
Right.
yeast will produce. That we know how to handle that, but I'd rather it not be there in the first place.
Right.
So I've used QA23 on my white wines and rosés for a long time, and I've been a big fan of it. I'm probably due for a try something new, but
Hey, you know what? In
we'll
my
see.
opinion, if something's not broken, don't try to fix it, right?
Yeah,
This has beautiful aromatics. I wish I would stop saying beautiful, but that is really what it is.
thank
I'm
you.
sitting here. The people who are listening can't see this, but I'm sitting here and I'm just like sniffing, as you're talking. It is so beautiful.
Thank you.
The stones, the stone fruit is after, and that's what I like about well-made wines. Sometimes wines, and the warmer climate, everything is there and you can't quite distinguish what it is. It's just like, yeah, there's something there. And this, when you first bring it up, there's the feminineness of a Viognier to it. And then you continue and there's more, the stone fruit comes in. And then there's actually even a little bit of tropical in there,
Oh yeah. There, I mean, it does have the banana character,
Yes.
especially Viognier when it's fermenting is like all banana. It's just like banana, 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 banana. And then in the wine, you have more of the spring flowers, stone fruit, apricot, peach, all that stuff. And then that banana kind of comes back. I'd say around the holidays. We always ferment, always bottle this in spring.
Okay.
I'd say the banana comes back around Thanksgiving. So it's a fun wine. It's a fun wine to age. A fun wine to make. I barrel ferment it, which is cool.
Okay, that
I
was
do
my
it all
next
in,
question, is how do you ferment it?
yeah, I barrel ferment it. I make it a lot like I make Chardonnay, but there are two very distinct differences. I don't put any new oak on it, and I don't put any part of the wine through ML. So
Okay.
everything else is pretty close to the same. It's barrel fermented at what I would call a warm-ish fermentation temperature, low 60s.
Okay.
It's hard in any cellar to keep the fermentation temperature below that in barrel. But we at William Harrison, where I make the wines, we have a really nice refrigeration system that keeps the cellar cold. But 61, 62 is kind of where it ends up at. And I stir the lees after fermentation. I stir the lees every 2
Gives
weeks
to the body.
for 3 months.
Okay.
So there's definitely
There's
some
that,
nanoproteins
yeah,
and
there's that medium
texture in
body.
there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then, so it's neutral oak, and then you're bottling. So this is 2021. So you do release it relatively quickly.
Yeah, I'd like to get it out for April release. So we bottle
Okay.
it usually in February or March. I try to get a 6 month aging on it, and
Okay.
then and middle to end of April, it's ready for prime time.
And what would you say are your favorite pairings to go with this Viognier?
Oh gosh, yeah, that it's a it's an elegant wine, like you said, but it is a fuller, at least a medium bodied wine in the
Yeah.
palate. So it can stand up to some richer foods. My wife made a risotto not too long ago that required white wine, and she put it in the dish, and then we drank it um, with the dish, and that was something else. Uh, yeah, anything
I'm
that you
not
would
gonna
have.
lie, I would not put this in my risotto. I have other wines that I'm like, oh, I need a cup of wine. Yeah, I'll do that one in there. I wouldn't put this in there. I wouldn't waste.
Well, thank you.
I
Yeah,
wouldn't waste my cup in there.
she gets it for free. So
That is true.
yeah,
That is true. I can see risotto with it. And I can see some cheeses with it. I'm the horrible food person. I'm like the only wine educator, wine, whatever, wine maker, everything that does horrible with food pairings because I don't eat anything. I'm very, very specific in what I eat. But risotto, it can be on my table any day of the week. But
I have a similar problem, but I'm the opposite. I will pair anything with anything,
okay.
and I just it doesn't bother me to have
Paired to
an improper pairing. I don't think that like Zeus is going to strike me with a thunderbolt, you know. But yeah, God, Viognier, that Viognier in particular, we have it with brunch a lot. If you're having
okay.
any kind of late breakfast, early lunch,
Right.
goes well.
And it doesn't have toast in it. Like the lees to me is giving it a body, not people think stirring a lees or whatever, champagne, that toastiness. It doesn't have that. The lees is giving it the body, but I can envision it with something that's toasty, that's,
Sure. Yeah,
that type of meal. Um,
absolutely.
yeah, I can see that. And then I'm gonna ask, is there any RS in here?
No,
It's
bone
completely
dry.
dry? Okay,
Yeah.
bone dry. Okay.
Yep,
It
bone dry.
it tastes dry. So it's a ripeness, it's the ripeness of the fruit that's in there. But to me it I wouldn't call it off dry. It's dry, but to my palate it tastes like there's a little RS in there, but not to the point where I would classify it as off dry.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I kind of the school of winemaking that I come from. Like if you can make a dry wine give you a second guess as to whether or not it's sweet, you've kind of done your job.
Oh, well, then I will give you
And
a standing ovation on that.
thank you. Yeah. So that like with white wine, it can be a little more difficult, but with red wine, if you
Mm,
can make a person think that a big tannic red wine has any kind of sugar in it and it's dry, then you've really helped to balance the palate on that wine. You know, the tannin is
right.
not out in front of anything. Um, you've really knitted the tannins together, as I like to say.
Right. It is. It will be consumed later tonight. I
Right
guarantee
on.
it. It is. And what does this? What does this retail for?
That's 40.
Oh, okay. People buy 40. It tastes much higher. It tastes much higher than
Thank
40.
you. Thank you.
Okay. So I just want to say, like, what about, well, you said that you like the wines of the Rhone Valley. Have you had the pleasure of visiting the Rhone Valley?
I haven't, but coincidence that you asked, next July, so just about a little less than a year from now, the four of us and my newborn baby. Well,
Oh,
no, it won't be a newborn.
congratulations.
Thank you. He will be he'll be 7 months when we go. We are hosting a wine cruise on the Rhone.
Oh, through the
So yeah,
winery? So like wine club members can join in or
it's not just wine club members. It's
okay.
anybody. Anybody can buy a cabin and go. We're going to be on a boat for 7 days from Lyon to some town in the south of France. I forget the name. I forget where we get off the boat at, but it's 7 days with like wine related excursions, and then I'm hosting a dinner that's going to feature our wines, and then we're going to turn it into a vacation after that. But no, I'm really looking forward to going. Châteauneuf-du-Pape is a place that I've had my eye on for more than 10 years, so the whole thing is going to be pretty cool.
I've never been either, but it just looks amazing there. It looks amazing.
Yeah,
Um,
I've been to Paris and went to a couple of wine shops in Paris and Chateauneuf, Gigondas, Vacqueyras, a lot of Rasto. Rasto wines are a lot more affordable, and they're down the street practically.
mhm.
They're a much lighter style than du Pape's are, but of the Rhone wines that we saw in Paris, a lot of those. So a lot of Cote du Rhone too. You can get a Cote du Rhone, you can get a good Cote du Rhone in France for like €8 a bottle, €9 a
Yeah.
bottle.
I tell people all the time that if you're at a restaurant and you know you want a good wine, but you have no clue what you're looking at, take a Côte d'Aron. That I
Probably not going to go wrong.
yeah, it's a pretty safe bet. And it's usually, like you said, not one of the higher priced ones on the
No,
list.
no.
You know.
It'd be equivalent of in California, I would say a Cote du Rhone would be the equivalent of probably a Central Coast AVA.
Okay.
It's a pretty big appellation. So
Mhm.
they're pulling from a lot of different
Different
regions.
regions, right?
So I would say that would be a decent guess
Okay.
or a decent analogy. Not, I mean, Central Coast AVA wines are a lot more than €10, but
Right.
they're in Europe, it's a little different buying wine, but I would say that would be a good analogy.
Right, absolutely. And then I just want to bring up your wine club because I think it's hysterical. The name, I love it. So it's called the Final Club.
Yeah.
And I just want you to explain to the listeners and viewers where that name came from because I absolutely love it.
Yeah, right on. I got my dad's mom, my grandmother is 81, and my whole life she's from Wisconsin. She has a good time. When we're all together as family, like grandma's there to party and she's there to have a good time. And she has her final Manhattan, and then she'll have her final Manhattan. So it's kind of like two is one and one is done kind of thing. So I don't know. We have with our brand, it's all McKahn family, right? Like everything has some kind of a familial tie into the brand some way. Like we have a wine called Morning Glass,
Okay.
and it's a red blend, and we got that name because when we used to take this lake vacation, we would call the lake in the morning
Morning
glass.
glass.
Like we're gonna go get the morning glass ski run going. So when we wanted to name the club something, like everyone just has like, wine club, or family club, or you'll come up with some name. I'm like, well, I want to come up with something that will remind us, or have a story to tell.
Right.
So I just thought, why don't we call it the Final Club? And of course, she got a big kick out of it. And but yeah, that's the genesis. Grandma Tish with her Final Manhattan.
I think that is hysterical. I absolutely love it. And we
Yeah, she's a
have
funny lady.
we have a friend of the family who has now passed, but years ago he used to have a final beer. So not as
There you go.
elaborate as the Manhattan, but he would drink beer and he would smoke like a chimney, man. That he like it was alternating hands, but
Yeah,
he would drink all day and then he's like, here's my final beer. And that was usually around, I don't know, 7-ish at night or whatever. And then he would finish that beer and then he'd go get one more. And we're like, but wait, that was your final beer. He's like, this is my final beer.
the final. Yeah,
So, or I
the
don't think he actually
final.
said final. I think he said second final. He might have been the second final, but it was the same concept.
Yeah, the final's gotten me in trouble a couple of times, but it's all good.
It's always like the final ski run, right? That gets you in
Right.
trouble, right?
Yeah.
It's always that final. But so thank you very much for joining me. Thank you for sharing this Viognier. It is outrageous. My husband and I are going bowling tonight. We're in a little bowling league. But this is going to be how we decompress after bowling, because we need to decompress
Right.
after our
Yeah.
bowling league. So it is absolutely stunning. And I am a huge Viognier fan. So I'm a little critical when it comes to when it comes to Viognier. My husband will be like, this is fine. And I'm like, no, you have that one. I'm not, but this one, I'm going to drink more of this one than he will, because
Thank you. Thank
I'm
you
going to
so
be
much.
pouring my glass heavier than his. It's going to be like
Thank
one
you.
for you and two for
Yeah.
me type thing. So, but thank you. And
Thank you.
where can people find McKahn Family?
Yeah, McKahnFamilyCellars.com is our website. We're on Instagram and I believe Twitter. I don't do any of the social, so I
I
think
know
we're
you
on
are
Twitter.
definitely Instagram, because that's where I contacted you guys.
Okay, yeah. So we're on Instagram. I am also on Instagram, chuck.mccann.wine. I'm a little more active. I do a lot more posting on like my personal life, on my personal
Okay.
Instagram, but my mom runs our McKahn Family Instagram, and I do take a lot of photos, mostly during harvest and bottling and stuff like that, and send them to her. And we're usually up to date on what we got going on in the winery and in the vineyard and all that stuff. So,
And if they're interested in that river cruise, is that they can find that information out on your website also?
definitely, I believe on the website, and definitely just DM my mom at McKahn Family Cellars Instagram, and she can hook you up. I am terrible. I forget the name of the company that's doing that has the boat, but it's supposed to be a good time. They are not new. They've been doing it for a while, and I know other wine brands that have done it, and they say it's awesome. So, yeah, if you can swing it, I would say if you're into Rhone wines, I would say it's going to be a good time.
Okay. And then finally, you are at Feast It Forward in
Yeah.
Napa. And how does it require a tasting or a tasting? Does it require an appointment, or are you doing walk-ins also?
Yeah, so Feast It Forward's pretty cool. There's kind of two different ways that you could go about it. If you just walked into Feast It Forward on any day that they're open, you can get 3 of our wines on the list by the glass or by the bottle or by the flight. And if you called us and made a reservation through our website, I believe we use Talk, T-O-C-K.
Okay.
We can host you at Feast It Forward, and we could pour you through the rest of our wines.
Okay. So that is a kind of a cool concept of Feast It Forward. That you a lot of collaboratives, it's like, like in Paso, we have Paso Underground, and that's a collaborative, but it's one big room. And then there's Winery A, Winery B, Winery C, Winery D, and they all are very independent. And Feast It Forward is a different concept. You really are together. So, and do they have their own website? Can somebody
They do. They do.
Okay.
I don't know if she takes reservations on there.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, if you wanted to set up a time, I would definitely do that through us.
Through you. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. And they can do that online at McKahn Family Wines or McKahn.com.
McKahn Family Cellars.
McKahNFamilyCellars.com. So
Got it, yeah.
thank you, Chuck, for coming on and sharing your wine and sharing your knowledge and everything Rhone centric. I absolutely
you.
love it. So thank you very much. And I will say, I don't really have anything left because I consumed it, but I will raise what's left of my little glass and say slancha.
Awesome. Thank you.
This has been another episode of Exploring the Wine Glass. Thanks for listening. If you have suggestions on what topics you would like me to discuss, please reach out on social media. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as Exploring the Wine Glass. I am also on LinkedIn as Lori Hoytbud. Of course, you can always email me at exploringthewineglass@gmail.com. If you enjoyed what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe to help others find me more easily. And most importantly, tell your wine-loving friends, because if you like the podcast, they will too. Music is Wine by Kevens. Until next week, slancha.
All the lovely bar